Hi, wake up. So, do you feel like you've had a spiritual awakening? I wrote a post this morning about awakenings, and I think a lot of people really are having awakenings. And what are they anyway? What is a spiritual awakening? Well, I would say it's anything that gets you out of that little ego mind. The ego is horrible. It's really not good for us. It's a very low level thinking mechanism. And I know it's the one that has captured all of our attention, including mine, that kind of guides us and tells us what to do and how to live. And most of the time, it's very fear based. You know, the ego, out of fear, will have you working a lot and will have you doing all kinds of things that maybe you wouldn't do if you felt safe, secure, and really felt good enough. You know, maybe you would do different things if you didn't have that ego voice in your mind kind of driving you. That's why an awakening, when we wake up, is so critically important right now. I do believe in the future the ego is going to be gone. I really feel like this inner critic that we have is really going to be very silent, muted. It's not going to be here because there are so many people waking up, and there's so many beautiful spiritual teachings out there now that help get us out of the ego. And I think that people are really seeing, like myself, that the ego is no place to be. It doesn't help us. It doesn't motivate us. It really doesn't do anything for us. So we all want to evolve. You know, we don't want to be left behind. So the way that we evolved really is by going into a different energy, into this intuitive energy, this energy of the present, this energy that's here with us now. It is our soul energy. And our soul energy comes from our one collective spirit. That's what it feels like to me, anyway. I think everybody feels this energy and interprets it differently, and that's fine. Everybody's going to have their own interpretation of it. The only thing that I would say about the spiritual energy, you know, the soul energy that we feel, is that it's never, ever anything fearful or negative or hints, even hints that you're doing anything wrong. If you feel like you've had an awakening and you feel like, you know, this spirit intuition is telling you to do all these things you don't want to do, I would have to say you've awoken to your soul. I mean, you haven't woken to your soul, you've awoken to your ego. And because the soul would never do that. You know, the soul is not driven by what we do here. The soul is driven by you and by who you are in your being and what really truly resonates with you. So what truly resonates with you is not going to feel difficult. It's not going to feel like a stretch. I mean, when you're kind of combined and kind of reunited with your soul energy, you feel the strength of it. And in that strength, whatever it is that you wanted to do, it will guide you and it'll help you to get there. So there is very little resistance to doing something that's really who you are and is soul driven. The ego is always having us just work too hard and do too much. And the ego would have us making lists upon lists upon lists. You know, I know people that have retired and it's almost like they're still working because their ego is having them do the exact same thing. It blows my mind. You know, like this, I have clients that, you know, wanted to retire and then they retired, and it's almost as if they're still working because the ego still gets them. They still have to get up and they have to do all these things on their list. And so, you know, one thing just got replaced by another thing. And this is not the way we want to live. We do not want to live driven by this ego. And it's very limited and it's not expansive. So the soul is always comforting us and is always telling us that we're fine as is. You know, you could do nothing or you could do everything, and you're fine when we love you, and there's nothing more that you need to do. So when you awaken to that, it settles you. It really settles you, and it kind of reorganizes your goals a little bit, because what you want to do when you're connected to the soul is very different than what you want to do when you're connected to the ego. Just two different things, very much two different things. So, when you're searching for things and you're searching for happiness, the ego will just have you always going in circles. The soul just doesn't do that, because the soul just says to you, you're happy. You can be happy right now. There's nothing wrong with you. And, there's nothing for you to do. There's nothing for you to do. There's nothing wrong with you. You're loved. You're guided. You're wise. You're magical. You can create whatever you want to create with your mind. When you really connect with us in the soul energy, you can be an amazing manifester if that's what you want. So it's kind of like, this incredible playground, and very, very different than what the ego tells us, where the ego tells us, no, it's limited amount of resources here on earth, and you're only going to have a few things. And unless you work really, really hard, you're not going to get anything. And even when you work really, really hard, you still might not get anything. That's kind of where the ego comes from. So we have to wake up. We have to wake up from this voice, or two voices. It can feel like a million voices. A lot of my clients will say, my ego sometimes feels like it's ripping me apart. And then sometimes my ego feels like it's telling me I'm the best thing since sliced bread. So whatever your ego is telling you, if it's too low or too high, that is unstable. It's just not a stable place to be. So when we awaken to the soul energy, or the energy within, it feels so different. It feels so good. It feels so grounding. And it's something that the more you give attention to, the more it grows within you. So if you start doing some spiritual work, say you do A Course in Miracles, or you decide to do the magic, or you listen to Abraham Hicks, whatever you're doing, that definitely is going to get you out of that ego. And when I was doing all of those spiritual teachings, I would get out of the ego while I was doing all of them, and then boom, I was right back in the ego. So I kept going back and forth, and that was a very trying time for me. It was really, really difficult, because I kept feeling like I was failing. How could I be doing Course in Miracles and feeling so good one minute, and then I get triggered the next minute, and then all bets are off. So I kind of started to feel like, does any of the spiritual stuff work? Do any of these things work? And that was kind of a really sad time. If they talk about the dark night of the soul, that probably was mine, because I really felt like, nothing is getting me out of this ego mindset, nothing. And I kept asking my soul for help. I kept asking, there has to be something. Can you please show me, tell me, there's got to be a way that we can get relief. There has to be a relief from myself when I get triggered and I'm in a bad place. And there has to be a relief from my clients, who I see just, staying in this horrible mindset that is very restricted and very tunnel vision, and you can't seem to get out of it. So, what the soul helped me to do was to keep doing these spiritual teachings. And the more I did them, and the more I just, sat in this energy that I opened up to through my awakening, I realized there was like a tipping point. There was definitely a tipping point where I just started to realize that staying in this energy was really what I was supposed to be doing. And staying in this energy was the thing that was going to get me out of the ego mind. And it's so funny, because I think for a long time I was using my ego mind to try to figure it out. And the ego will just have, like I said, it'll have you going in circles. So staying in the soul energy really helped me so much to let go of the ego, and then to also see through the ego. The soul loves the ego, because the soul loves everybody. Soul does not discriminate. But when you're in this energy, it shows you exactly what's happening. So if your ego is saying you're not good enough, the soul will say, well, from the ego's point of view, it makes sense. From the ego's point of view, you didn't get that job. You didn't make enough money. So So all of that could really be true, and that's really how the ego can get us. However, what the soul would say is just because that might be true doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean that you're not worthy and that you're not wonderful, and that this is other side of you. Come over here and look what we have for you. Here is where all the wisdom that you may have been lacking over here. When you're in the ego mind, you're not connecting to anything that is really wise inside of you. So you might be making choices and you might be doing things that are a little, just closed-minded, like because you don't have access to this over here. So when you start to have access to everything that the soul has for you, then it changes everything. And not that you need all of this stuff to be worthy, the soul would tell you. It would say you don't need it. But when you realize you have it, it's almost like you don't need it. It's like, oh, so everything that I've been looking for, I have always had. Everything. It's sort of like, the Wizard of Oz when she put on those shoes. She had everything and she didn't realize it. So it's the same thing with us. So I think that's where, the ego was tripping me up all the time, is that the ego made sense to me. I could see my clients and myself got triggered, and then all those bad feelings came up. And the feelings aren't wrong and they're not bad. They come from an accumulation of experiences that didn't feel good. So all of that's correct. So the ego isn't wrong. It's just only telling you one side of the story, where the soul opens up so much more. So the ego is maybe a chapter and the soul is the novel. And we have been reading the same chapter over and over and over again. We need to take the novel out and by chapter, see the magical wisdom that lives in each chapter of that book. And, when we realize that there's another book to read from, that's when we're very drawn to that book. And that's when the ego over here just isn't as appealing, because this is so much more and tells you so much more about yourself, So we do need encouragement to get out of our ego minds, to look for the book, to first to know a book exists, second to know we have access to it, and then third to read it. We all have it, but we don't read it. And I wasn't reading it for the longest time. I had this big spiritual awakening. I have this energy that I can feel within me that's so powerful and so magical. And I was still letting the ego get to me. I was still taken in by the ego. So, that's why I'm just so passionate to help you to get out of your ego so that you can grab a hold of this new book, so that you can live a life that's intuitive and not thinking and flows. And so you could feel so good and feel your worth and to feel your connectedness to everybody, that what everybody has, you have, and what everybody struggles with, you struggle with. And there's just such a feeling of oneness that no matter what is happening, I can relate to other people. And, it's just such a beautiful feeling to feel that connectedness. There's none of this separateness and, I have to fear you, none of it. And also the soul will help you not to take things personally. The soul will say, that was you. Not too long ago, that was you. Remember, and, just realize that they're not connecting. They're not connecting. And when they're not connecting, their ego is vicious. Their ego is vicious and abusive, mostly to themselves. And then it is to you. So my tactic now, I don't fight with other people's egos. That is not a fight that you're ever going to win. If you're going to fight with somebody's ego, it's just, you're never going to win that fight. I don't fight that fight anymore. what I do is I just move away from people's egos and say, okay, I get it. That could be me on any given day, and I'm just going to move away from that person's ego. And when they're sane again, and they will be, give them 2 or 3 days, they'll be sane again. Then you can go hang out with them. You don't have to write them off forever. Just because people are in their egos doesn't mean that, they don't connect to their loving and kind and beautiful self. They just let the ego get them for a time. So we just have to quietly wait until they return to their sane place, and then we can have a relationship with them again. So it's really an amazing thing, just learning so much from your soul, and to have that support and that unconditional love and that unconditional wisdom of, look, you know what, that person is in their ego. That's all that it is. And to feel that and to really feel it, that changes everything, because you know it then. I could tell it to you, and you're going to have to remind yourself for a time, but until you feel it from your own soul, you might doubt it. You just might doubt it. So, from my soul to your soul, I just hope that you do anything, anything you can to wake up, first of all, to see the book, read from the book, stay with this book and leave the ego book aside, and just sit in that soul energy for as long as you can, so that your tipping point tips and you get there, and then you're in this place that what I'm talking about with you, you just get. You'll just be like, wow, I got it. I really understand what she's talking about. So I know a lot of people are opening up to it, and in different ways, and it's so exciting, and I love seeing it. So, share with me what's going on with you, and have a lovely awake day, knowing that the soul exists within you, this energy, this beautiful energy. And even if you're not connecting to it yet, just know it's there, and know how much that it loves you, and it loves anything and everything that you're doing, and really wants to support you and do what's in your heart. That's what your soul wants. The soul wants you to do your heart's desire, whatever it is. For me, it's teaching people and helping people. That's always been, since I've been young, my heart's desire. So I hope that helps.